Hey, what's up guys? I'm Josh. Today we're talking about the Topping DX5. I'm going to keep this review short, sweet, and to the point. I think that this thing performs pretty well. It's in a really nice chassis, a small, efficient, compact design with good measurements and a fair price. Regarding the build, with the looks, I'm quite happy to see something that is not just a standard rectangle, but I do actually quite like the build of this. Not only do they fit a lot of features and utility in this, but they actually have some, I think, major upsides to the build of this if you need a small compact unit. For one, this has an inbuilt power supply that features the same switch design that we saw in the A30 and the D30. And given the weight of this thing, I'm actually surprised that they were able to put a power supply into a chassis of this size, and you just need a standard cable. It's pretty impressive. On the back, you have a number of digital inputs featuring coaxial, optical, USB, and Bluetooth, which is a big upside to this. This also comes with an output of RCA and XLR, and the unit does come with a remote. Now, the DAC output measures really well. The DAC that they use in this is two ES9068A chips, outputting a super low distortion number. It's like 0.0002%, some ridiculously low output. Unfortunately, on the inputs, I mean, the whole thing is shaped like a USB-C. I think these companies really should catch up with 2022 and start putting USB-C as the USB port. It's just become the standard. It's fine for you to adopt it. Just adopt it. There are other amplifiers doing it. I know you can, you just don't. This also does come in black, but I think the gunmetal gray is better. Now on the DAC end, this does make for a pretty well measuring DAC, but you are kind of purchasing a DAC amp when you purchase this for its asking price. And so for the amplification, we see a familiar term, which is NFCA, which is nested feedback composite amplification, which is Topping style of amplification, which is very clean and something that I personally quite enjoy the sound of. It doesn't have a tonality leaning. I think that it leans extremely neutral for its flavor profile. It's kind of dead even, no frills, just the facts, just the information, good dynamic range. And that's something that we've seen on the A30 Pro, the A90, basically everything that's recently come out with Topping. It seems like what Topping is doing, which I think is a good thing, is filling every use case and every price point with some form of NFCA amp. So it may start cheaper with the NX7, which is a mobile DAC amp, which has NFCA tech in it, and then all the way up to their big boy amplifiers like their A90. Unlike their big boy amplifiers, this doesn't output a ton of power. I think at most you're gonna be getting about 1.8 watts into 32 ohms. Now this is a weird price to power to spec argument. And hear me out here. Now at this price point, if you just buy an amplifier, you can get better power. At this price point, if you just buy a DAC, you can get better specifications. But you can't really get better specifications and more power at this price point if you buy a DAC and an amplifier, especially if you're limiting yourself to an all-in-one. Now, if you were to go back a few years when you were talking about amplifiers, most amplifiers had a decent amount of power, but they didn't really sound good when they were maxed out. The NFCA stuff really doesn't suffer from that. It sounds the same whether you're using a minimal amount of it or all of it. And because of that, even if you're pushing the amplifier to its extremes for capability, you still get really good sound out of it. But 1.8 watts is a number that to me sticks out as being kind of right on the edge where you start to not be able to run some things. You're gonna be good for most and probably the majority of what people will buy, but you may have to consider what you're gonna run. So if you're gonna run things like the new Hyphen XS or, basically any of the Bayer Dynamics, most of the Sennheisers, you're gonna be good with this thing. I think for those, this thing is gonna be perfectly clean and plenty of power with tons of headroom. You're never gonna run into an issue with a lot of those headphones. Where you might run into issues is really high demanding planar magnetic headphones, things like Diana's, maybe an Aria, things like Sisvara, typically on the higher end of inefficient planar headphones. Those are the issues that you're gonna face with this particular device. Now, the reason why I had to make this review short and sweet is because I think that most of these NFCA amps sound the same. It's just a matter of what headphones they will play well with. So you go to something like an A90, which is their top of the line NFCA amplifier, which I daily drive. That amplifier can run everything from the most efficient IEMS to the most demanding of headphones. Now this can do really efficient IEMS and that middle range of demanding headphones, but it doesn't quite have the 6 watts of total power that the A90 does. However, sound quality within headphones that it can play is the same. Now, the sound of NFCA is extraordinarily clear and concise. And this goes from the top end of treble through the tonality of the mid-range, but also the low end of bass. So bass hits strong and clear, and NFCA as an amplification style just exerts total control over every headphone that you really plug into it. It's just a matter of how much power you're going to be able to push through that headphone. Now, the power limitations of this device are really the only reservation that I have about it. I think sound quality is excellent. I think use case and features and build is excellent, but I wish it had a little bit more power, mostly due to competition. So at about $400, you can get this stack, which is a Modius and a Magnus, and it's a separate DAC and amp stack for just about $400 plus tax and shipping. Now, granted, it's not an all-in-one, so they're not exactly apples to apples, but if you're talking about your dollar per sound quality and power capability, this might be a little bit better. Now, I actually think that the sound quality of the topping, if you're playing on a headphone that plays well with both, I think the topping is a little bit better. It's a little bit cleaner of a signal. It's a little bit more neutral and fair for its tonality. The Magnus tends to run a little bit warmer in tonality, and that can be enjoyable, but I don't think it's quite dead center like the topping is. However, the Magnus does come with significantly more power than the DX5. And that's really the only major argument I would have against the DX5 for the cost, is just like with this headphone, you kind of have to really consider what headphones you either have or you're gonna have with it. Whereas with the Magnus and the Modius, you're good with any headphone, but you're not quite gonna get the totality of cleanliness of the signal that you'll get with the DX5. So that's my review. I do think that this is a very good unit, and for the right customer, I think this is gonna be an absolutely baller DAC amp to have. Just be aware of what headphones you're gonna be running off of it. I would say anything that's like super high impedance and below about like 90 dB per milliwatt for sensitivity, I might stay away from this, but anything higher than that, I think you're gonna be just fine. Okay guys, thanks a lot for watching. See you in the next video. Peace.